Welcome back to the live stream, Election Day 2012. I'm Mark Glazer, Executive Editor of PBS MediaShift. We are midway through our live stream chat about the election and social media and new forms of media and how they are affecting the election right here on Election Day. We're at Current TV headquarters in San Francisco, right across from the AT&T Park where the San Francisco Giants play. We want to thank Ustream for helping us put this together, and we also want to thank USC Annenberg for sponsoring our election special at MediaShift. And joining us now via Skype video is Francois Barr, who teaches communication at USC Annenberg. He also directs the Twitter analysis project at the Annenberg Innovation Lab. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. So tell us about this Twitter sentiment analysis. I've got it on the web here, so Dan, you can bring it up if you want, but it's really looking at, well, why don't you go ahead and explain what it is? It's showing tweet volume and it's showing sentiment. Can you explain those?
Right. So during the election campaign, we've been pulling all the tweets having something to do with the election. We've been searching not simply for the main candidates' names, but for a number of keywords also that had something to do with the discourse around the election, both during the primary campaign and during the general election campaign as well. So what you're seeing on that dashboard is on the top right, the sentiment, the volume of tweets for each one of the main candidates. We also have the vice president candidates because we put that up for the vice presidential debate, but clearly most of the action is with the top of the ticket here, which is getting most of the volume. And what we have done is jointly with our partners in the Viterbi School of Engineering, a group called the Signal Analytics and Analysis and Interpretation Lab, we have put together a sentiment analysis program that sifts through this tweet stream as we receive it and tries to guess what is the sentiment that's expressed within each one of these tweets. And that's what we graph on the top left. So what you have on the top left is gray and gold bars that indicate respectively the number of tweets that are negative about each candidate and the number of tweets which are positive about each one of the candidates. And
it looks like Obama is getting kind of the more negative sentiment, and he's also getting more of the positive sentiment.
Right. So basically what you're saying is Obama is getting more volume and Romney is getting less volume. The ratio at this point of positive to negative is probably about the same between the two candidates. We can't really make a big difference between the two. And that's kind of it's been a constant throughout the election campaign that most of Twitter traffic is negative. People have, they like to say bad things and to make fun jokes about the candidates. There is definitely a lot more negative sentiment and negative tweets than positive tweets generally.
Yeah, you can see that.
The other thing you can see on this dashboard is if you look at the bottom right here, is the trending words. So we're trying to detect which are the words that surface that are the most common in the last couple hours of the tweet stream that we're getting. I'm not sure that it's very significant for this election. It's something that's much more useful, for example, during the debate when something is happening and you can see fairly quickly whether that there is a reaction on Twitter.
So tell me about a little bit behind what you guys are doing, or what you're trying to gain from doing this, because we've seen a lot of people try to look at Twitter and look at Facebook and try to find kind of the sentiment there. I know Twitter themselves has done kind of a Twitter sentiment page that they put together. How do you guys differ from kind of all these other people? What's the kind of the science behind it without getting too geeky?
Right. Well, one of the elements is that we're doing this in real time, so that what you're seeing is the sentiment as expressed in the last 30 seconds, and that gets refreshed every 30 seconds. And that's it's really a demo and an experiment to see how quickly we can process this stream of information. During during the debate, we get over 10,000 tweets per minute. That's about the volume we're getting now on election day. So from a technical standpoint, this was something that was interesting for us to experiment with. The way we've tried to gauge sentiment is by using a model that is trained by real human beings. So we've had a large number of people, most of them that we recruited through Amazon Mechanical Turk, annotate tweets that we give them randomly and see how what they think differs from the algorithm, and use that as a way to correct what the algorithm is telling us. The other thing we've done is use some of our students and some of our friends to help annotate tweets as well. And there is, if you go to the link which is at the bottom of that page where it says "Go to Tweet Annotation Page," and click on that, what you'll see is a number of the most negative tweets, the most positive tweets, some random tweets, and some neutral tweets if you go down that list. And this is what's kind of the raw data that's coming out of our algorithm system. And what we're inviting people to do is to help correct what the algorithm missed. So for example, if you see a tweet that's labeled as negative and you think it should be positive, you can click on it and you get to an annotation page which lets you reclassify it, essentially. And so we're using all this data that comes from human beings, from the Amazon Mechanical Turk people and from people who are watching the debate with us to recalibrate the algorithm. We've tried to do that in real time as well, so to have people annotate the tweets during the debate or during any event, because we think that real time really does matter to understanding what is the sentiment that's expressed in the tweets.
Okay. And are you guys doing any other projects at your innovation lab around politics?
Well, actually, we're doing many other things with this database of tweets. In many ways, the real-time sentiment was an experiment to try to see what we can do, and I think the data is going to be much more useful when we've had time to look at it. And so, for example, we've been analyzing the tweet traffic after the fact. We've been looking at, for example, the tweets during the debates in much more detail, and I think that information may probably be more insightful than simply the real-time tweets. For example, one of the things we saw during the debate is that a huge portion of the traffic is humor, and one of the interesting data points is if you look at most retweeted, so the one that people vote for the most and send to again, try to keep at the top of the tweet stream, more than half are coming from accounts which either belong to professional comedians or to parody accounts. People like Bill Maher, Jon Stewart, but also fake account like Phil Werrell, which is a fake account for Will Ferrell, that really are trying to use humor as a way to participate in the political discourse. And I think this is actually really interesting because most of the people who just do straight sentiment analysis are basically giving the same weight to all the tweets and basically saying, we're going to try to get from that mass of statements an aggregate sentiment that is expressed for that. And I think it's going to be really interesting to look at what exactly people are doing, who is sending those tweets, what is their intent, what kind of discourse is going on, and what can we say from that.
And so you said you had a lot of actual people just annotating it by hand. So how much of this do you think is kind of people powered, and how much is algorithm powered?
Well, the dashboard you're seeing is an algorithm, but the algorithm has been trained by real people. So in other words, we get human beings to annotate the tweets, and we use the results of their annotation to train the algorithm that will then do it automatically, but trying to do it as well as possible and as closely as possible to the way humans do it.
And what do you think the end results of all this analysis are? I mean, is it possible? We've seen some people try to actually call, try to actually call the race, in certain battleground states based on Twitter and social media sentiment. I mean, do you think that's kind of a stretch to go that far right now? I mean, is that something that eventually you guys will aim for, or do you think that's going to be possible at some point?
Well, but this was the idea initially of using Twitter as a vast focus group and as a way to get sentiments and opinions from people. I'm actually really skeptical about whether that's possible or not, and partly because, as I said, there is a lot of humor that's in it. It's also difficult to know exactly how much weight to give to individual tweets. Some of them will get retweeted many times, and one question would be, do you want to give them more weight than others? We also have a big problem in analyzing sarcasm. Many of
Yeah,
the
that's
tweets are not.
I was wondering how you could deal with that because yeah, it's hard to really gauge sarcasm or skepticism or just if someone's saying something seriously but they're deadpan or something.
Right. No, and that's something computers are notoriously bad at, and that they tend to take things at face value and they don't see that something is sarcastic. We're able to account for that a little bit in our model because the human annotators are asked whether the tweets they annotate is sarcastic or whether it's funny. Interestingly, we find that about a third of the tweets that we've had them analyzed are coded as sarcastic. And these are the ones on which people differ the most as to whether they're positive or negative. So sarcasm is definitely a big problem in engaging the intent of the tweet. And then in using that as a focus group or as a way to predict the outcome of the election,
Yeah.
there is also the problem that Twitter itself is really not a random sample of the population. We know that only about 15% of the people who are using the internet are on Twitter, and that's really not a representative sample even of internet-connected people, so even less of the general population. It's a sample that skews very heavily African American. Interestingly, it also skews very young as well. So many the people using Twitter tend to be younger than the general population.
Right. I mean, that's kind of my biggest skepticism about those kind of calls or when they're trying to call races or decide races or read the tea leaves through social media, that not everyone is on it, so it's a hard thing to pick or to extrapolate, I guess you could say.
So there are really two steps that are problematic to extrapolate this. One is how good is your model at detecting sentiment? Given a given tweet, how good are you at saying for sure that it's either positive or negative, and for whom it's positive and for whom it's positive, and negative, which is also a difficult question. And then assuming you could do that perfectly, you don't really know what this represents. So what is the population that is tweeting, and how does it correlate with the general population? So there are two steps that introduce some error here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. We know you're probably busy following everything on Election Day.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to go back and look at the Twitter feed.
Of course. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. And next we'll have next we'll have Mark Hanna, who's our PBS MediaShift political consultant, who will be talking about some of the things he's been covering for MediaShift about social media and about technology in the election, coming up briefly. Welcome back to our PBS MediaShift live stream on Election Day 2012. I'm Mark Glazer, executive editor of PBS MediaShift. We are coming live from Current TV headquarters in San Francisco. And joining us now via Skype is Mark Hanna, who's the MediaShift political correspondent. He's a PhD fellow at USC. He was a staffer on the Kerry Edwards campaign. He's also done some work for the Obama-Biden campaign and has worked in PR. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on, man.
Sure. So tell me, what are your, you've done some interesting coverage for us about social media and about just how these campaigns have played out online and just the growing kind of influence, let's say, of online, whether it's going to predict the election or not, we don't know. We've talked a little bit about that. But what have you been noticing? I mean, what are the big takeaways for you this election cycle when it comes to kind of new platforms and new ways? I mean, you've been there before, so you could see how things went in the past. How is it different now?
Right. I mean, it's different every 4 years, almost sort of like a mini revolution we talk about on PBS as this, and MediaShift being about the digital media revolution. It's almost as though we're doing a mini revolution every 4 years. When I was working on the Kerry campaign, that was the first presidential campaign where we had blogs impacting the national discussion. Blogs really weren't around in 2000, and so or having any sort of appreciable effect on the media coverage of the election. So, and then 2008, you saw social media and the impact there. But really, now it's metastasized the influence of social media, and in good ways and in more sort of problematic ways, I think. You have this medium that's really democratized, as it likes to tout itself. Discussion. Everybody really does have a voice. Anybody with a Facebook account or a Twitter handle is participating. But then when you look at the actual discussion and the content of the participation, how has that changed? That's an interesting question, and that's been the subject of at least one of the posts I've written for you recently.
Yeah, let's bring that up,
about
Dan.
the memes and the debate memes with big birds, binders, and bayonets and things like that.
Yeah, you had this thing what you called it rabid response. That basically, when you go online during a debate, I mean, obviously you're watching it on TV. But you also have to have kind of Twitter stream open just to like read all the jokes and see all the reactions. Otherwise, it's just not half as entertaining. But your take on this was that this kind of rabid response online, is it just a distraction to people learning more about politics? And is it really kind of distracting us from the more important issues? I mean, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to reduce it to, just this mere distraction or anything like that. I think what's interesting is that, um, you know, for all human history, we've been dealing with an economics of scarcity in the information world, right? And so all our communication tools and all our media innovation has been propelled by a desire to overcome that scarcity, to increase the amount of information that people have accessible to them and the speed with which they can access that information. Now I think we're at a problem is the inverse sort of challenge where we have so much information. I don't necessarily need to talk about information overload because this is well known to your viewers right now. But we certainly have a place right now where we're dealing with how to manage all this information. It's pretty remarkable that it's not possible to be current on a presidential debate simply by watching it on the television. You have to sort of, CNN keeps this sort of sentiment. I heard you talking to Francois Barr, Professor Barr, about Twitter sentiment. CNN is, monitoring undecided voters in real time as it airs the debate. So you're getting that information, that instant feedback. You're getting instant feedback from Twitter and the like. And so in order to really have a comprehensive grasp, you need to be getting information from all sorts of sources. Now, in this sort of economy where we have a surplus of information and perhaps a deficit of attention and a deficit of context, it's going to be, I think it puts a new premium on the ability to analyze and provide thoughtful, critical analysis on things and trends that are happening. But in the short term, certainly the things that are the most popular on Twitter and in social media have a tendency to be humorous, have a tendency to be provocative, counterintuitive, and they have a currency all their own. They are a currency in a sense because it demonstrates to your friends in social networking sites and your friends on Facebook that you're hip to the newest the trends, or you're knowledgeable about the latest memes. And whether that has a positive or a questionable impact on public discourse is, I think, an open question. But it certainly, let me just add on to that, it certainly brings in more discussion than existed before. The quantity is increased, and that's a net good thing. It's whether the quality is what it once was.
And do you think that's something that over time might change because we do have so much unfiltered information we're getting, whether it's online, whether it's in blogs, whether it's on social media, how, we're bombarded with information. I mean, is this about trying to find kind of some kind of filtering mechanism or some way to really bring the information that's smart, some kind of smart filter? I mean, we've been talking about agents and all these things that will give us the right information at the right time. I mean, do you think there are efforts around that that will help kind of filter that big, just, massive amount of information we're flooded with?
I do think that. I mean, I think that the promise of the internet, that everybody has a voice, that it enables self-expression in really revolutionary ways, is being realized. Absolutely. And I think that there are new opportunities for synthesizing this information. Your blog is a case study in how to sort of get our and corral all the trends and information and different new websites that are popping up, and be able to contextualize a lot of that. I mean, your blog does a fantastic job, and I know we work on it together. And there are a tremendous amount of experts, and the point I guess I was trying to make before is expert opinion doesn't necessarily go away. There isn't this necessarily new privileging of amateur or mass opinion. I think expert opinion or informed opinion becomes almost more valuable in a marketplace, as long as it's not dominating or subsuming or eclipsing or some other way restricting everybody else's enjoyment of expressing themselves online. I mean, if you want to go back and look at books by people like Walt Lippmann and things, and if you go back to the 30s and 40s and 50s, and a lot of academic research on public opinion suggested that the masses, as it were, the majority of human beings were too busy to have really informed and knowledge and be knowledgeable about public affairs, and therefore it was a fine thing that all these elites were making decisions and influencing public opinion in sort of command and control style ways. I think that model is definitely fallen by the wayside. I think it's generally a good thing, and I think instead of the command and control model, which was the mantra of advertising professionals and PR professionals in the past, the command and control model is being replaced with more of a conversational model, and I think that in general, it's been a very good thing. I'll say I'm doing some research right now with Professor Kirsten Thorson and another PhD student, colleague of mine at Annenberg School, and we're investigating the memes, the ones I mentioned before, Big Bird binders and bayonets, that were respectively the memes that emerged from the 3 presidential debates, and how those get circulated. Who's spreading them? Which kinds of references are getting the most comments? Which interest group or media organization mashup photographs are getting the most circulation, and why? And it's too early to draw any conclusions now, but I think that we'll, as we make some observations and do some analysis on the data, it's going to be interesting to see how these memes take on a life of their own, and what we can do, with that information.
Yeah, I mean, you think about those memes that happen, like the Big Bird theme, like, even during the convention with Clint Eastwood and Invisible Obama, and all the things that became popular. I mean, the thing about it is that I guess, we've always had satire, we've always had some kind of comedy, but now, we've got almost like an instant reaction comedy. I mean, people who can really react to things quickly, build something,
Right.
start a feed right away, put an image up, do some quick Photoshop. The tools and the distribution make this kind of instant satire, instant memes, so easy to create. I guess the question is, how do you stand above when everyone else is making, similar jokes?
Right. I don't think you necessarily need to, or maybe, people aren't going to Facebook for thoughtful analysis. They're going to blogs like PBS's blog. They're going to, look at the New York Times or other mainstream media outlets. I think there's, again, this isn't washing away the importance or the influence of these outlets. I think there are sort of parallel purposes for social media and for traditional journalism and fact checking. I do think that, when I was working in corporate public relations, one thing I would always counsel clients is there's a reason that's called social media. It's designed not to promote products or not to, get a corporate message out there or to protect brand reputations or things like that. It's designed for people to communicate with other friends and family in a social way. So, people are getting, I think that while there's absolutely political expression happening on Facebook and Twitter, those aren't what Facebook, political expression wasn't what Facebook and Twitter was designed to do or to necessarily be a platform for. So, there's a little bit of backlash. There's a hilarious thing on BuzzFeed today about, these are the 28 things or the 27 things worse. What are the 27 things worse than people talking about politics on Facebook? And then it has all these, cute images or various funny, humorous images. And then at the very end of that, it says, actually, no, wait, none of these 26 things are worse. There's nothing worse than people talking about politics on Facebook. So, I think there are a large, and the Pew Research Group has come out with data, and only 2% of American voters, according to Pew's research, a few months ago, but this election cycle, only 2% of American voters are getting any political information from Twitter. And it's a small percentage that are getting it from Facebook and social media. I think there are certain people that are interested in politics, that are updating profiles and updating their status with political information. But there was another post I did for you where it was different research by Pew showing that there are actually people who are unfriending family members and defriending friends who are too vocal with their political expression online, and it was that's astounding.
True. It's amazing how people are kind of afraid to put up some of the stuff, some of their political views. You're talking about BuzzFeed. There's a really funny post. Dan, maybe you can bring up the web here. They have their 2012 election night drinking game. The different, according to, Fox or MSNBC or CNN, if someone uses a touch screen, one drink. Someone says candy or wolf, one drink. It's pretty funny. And then all this other stuff about Sandy or battleground or firewall. Basically these kind of phrases that come up in all the coverage. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, no, it's I also contribute every once in a while to this website on Politico, or it's the Arena, and it's various people who have worked in politics. And the question that Politico at the Arena asked yesterday was, do you trust the mainstream media? I'm paraphrasing here, but do you trust the mainstream media to be able to report accurately and reliably the election results tomorrow night, i.e. tonight? And I do think that there is like you were talking to Francois about, there's sort of a tendency for those, maybe you weren't talking to him about it, but a tendency for those in the mainstream media to amplify and to retweet and to give traction to Twitter in a way that reports it as accurate or true, and so there's in a sort of speed-addled media culture where every media company is trying to scoop the other on calling the election results. I see you looking up there at CNN right now.
Yeah, because it's funny. Some people in our social stream, I guess they're in Denmark, and they're saying, well, they were saying that they were falling asleep, and I thought maybe it's because of our discussion, but then I realized they're in Denmark where it's like midnight or something like that, and I guess they're checking in to see if we have kind of like the final call on the presidential election. But
right.
Obviously that's not coming for a few more hours, so we're a little bit ahead of that right now.
Yeah, the one nice thing about I just moved from New York to LA, and the one nice thing about being on the West Coast is that there's a possibility that I'll go to bed tonight and know, at a reasonable hour and know who our next president is going to be.
Rather than having to
Um,
stay up till 5 in the morning or something. But I guess the first polls close. I think it's at 7 Eastern, right? So it'll be in
right,
about an
right.
hour or so, and then that'll just kind of roll through. But even after the polls close, I mean, obviously there'll be exit polls, and some of the news organizations will make the easy early calls. But you're
Right.
right. I mean, we might be up for a really late night. And how are you going to be looking at it? I mean, will you be? This seems like kind of a multi-screen day. Will you be watching TV, having Twitter up? I mean, what are the things? How will you follow the results as they come in?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll do all those. I'll be on the internet and I'll be checking my Twitter stream and I'll have cable news on just like most other people. But no, I'll have for sure at least three of my screens live and active. But then again, I'm a political junkie when it comes to this sort of thing. I suspect that the vast majority of people are going to, if they have a TV nearby, they're going to be, their eyes are going to be affixed on the television, and if they don't, they'll be checking their email, they'll be checking their friends' walls on Facebook. So there's it used to be the case that we would have to find a television or orient ourselves towards some media and have, for example, parties for watching the debate results come in. Now with mobile internet, available on our smartphones and the ubiquity of this information, we don't need to necessarily change our plans in order to be getting this information in real time. It
That's
will be
true.
interesting. I think Virginia will be the most interesting, and that's one of the first to close. And then obviously Ohio is Eastern time zone, so that'll be Ohio and Florida will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, we have a poll actually, Dan, if you can pull up the web. We did a poll on MediaShift. Obviously, this is our slice of the audience, but we were asking people how they're going to get their U.S. election results. And TV, led at 30%. News websites were 23%, as you can see, and Twitter was 16%. So, now we gave people the option to do multiple choices because it really is a multiple, and then 9% Facebook, and then down the line you've got radio at 5%, blogs at 5%. Obviously, some people who don't care. Some people say someone will tell them. They don't even want to follow it. So it is kind of a diverse way that people are getting their information. There's no question about it.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, it's interesting that for the first time, this 2012 is the first time where more people are getting uh, using as a regular source of election coverage. They're using the internet more than their local newspaper. I thought that was an interesting statistic
Yeah.
that again Pew came out with
Yeah, Pew
about a month or
also.
two ago.
Yeah, Pew also had the statistic that we were saying before that out of that a third of Americans under 30 have social media as their primary source of news, and that's
Right.
more than newspapers. It's actually equivalent to TV. So that's a real big shift in usage. And even if it's under 30, you assume that might change over time to be more broadly.
Right, right, and that raises new questions that I know we don't have time to get into right now. But whether there is, earlier research shows that audiences in social media spaces are segregating themselves a little bit and have a tendency to hear information from like-minded people, and whether
Yeah.
that affects the accuracy or the moderating influence of more fact-driven information, and whether or not this sort of cyber balkanization, as Cass Sunstein, professor at Harvard, has called it, whether the cyber balkanization is actually polarizing political opinion
Yeah.
by reinforcing those things that we already think, and by feeding our own interests and the natural customization or the customizability of the internet is actually decreasing the range of experience and the range of various media content and headlines to which we're being exposed. So
Definitely.
that's an interesting question for another day.
Definitely. Well, thanks for joining us. I know you've got a lot going on now. Good luck with your research, and we'll look forward to seeing your kind of postmortem on the election over at PBS Media Shift.
Thank you, Mark. Great to see you.
Yep. Take care, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And next up, we'll have Kathleen Hall Jameson, who's working on a project at University of Pennsylvania called FlackCheck.org. So we'll talk to her about that project in just a moment when we come back to the live stream, Election Day 2012 with PBS MediaShift. Welcome back to the live stream for the Election Day 2012 PBS MediaShift. I'm Mark Glazer, Executive Editor of PBS MediaShift. We've been talking today a lot about the election, obviously, and new technology, social media, what's having an effect on the election, what's just noise, and how to filter that noise. And joining us now via Skype is Kathleen Hall Jameson, who started a project called FlackCheck.org. She's the director of the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania. She's the author or co-author of 16 different books. She's also the co-founder of FactCheck.org. Welcome to our live stream.
It's good to be with you.
So tell us a little bit about this FlackCheck.org project. I've got it up on the web here, and we'll show a screen of it. But tell us what the thinking was, what the object was. I know you guys are using humor in some ways to look at political ads. What was the idea behind it and the mission?
We've been running FactCheck.org since 2003. And we had a part of the site that was called Fact Check Ad, which was our attempt to reach high school and college students. Because after the first year of FactCheck.org, which was 2004, we found in our end-of-the-year survey that we had attracted a sizable audience of students and teachers. And we realized that we weren't systematically trying to reach that audience. We were actually trying to reach journalists. We'd inadvertently found the public when Dick Cheney miscited our site during the vice presidential debate in 2004, and decided that it probably would be a good idea if we used the visual capacities of the web better than we were doing with FactCheck to try to debunk visually the visuals that are in advertising, and also try to reinforce what FactCheck does in print with visuals and print on screen with short clips that we thought might make it easier to make sense of a very complex political environment. We thought if we could add some humor periodically, that might not hurt either. And so we launched an attack campaign against Abraham Lincoln, trying to unseat him in 1864. We ran the campaign on behalf of McClellan, and we had major political consultants, Bob Shrum and Mark McKinnon, do the ads for Lincoln. Our McClellan ads are sleazy, the Lincoln ads are honorable, and we thought if we invited the audience to ask who would win, we might increase the likelihood that the audience would be reflective about the deceptive tactics used in contemporary politics.
Wow! And so, what was the reaction to some of these campaigns? I mean, they sound really interesting. You've got like a whole series of things around deceptive dramatizations that you've done. You've got false logic, guilt or guilt by association, insinuation, and conspiracy theory. How did people react when they saw some of these?
We got very positive response, particularly from teachers and from students who were trying to teach the logic of campaigns. When many people went to school in the 50s and 60s, they were taught a structure of analysis that was usually called propaganda analysis. And they were given labels to try to uncover propagandistic techniques. All of this was developed after World War II, when there was a fear that populations might be too vulnerable to propaganda. Well, it hadn't been updated or really thought through in a television age very well. And so what we were trying to do with the Patterns of Deception page was to provide categories that would help you see the deceptions. So we give them a label that we think works, and then we show you the pattern over and over again, hoping you'll make more sense of it and recognize it.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating.
Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold.
Oh, that's okay. And so what, with FactCheck.org, the first site that you had founded on this kind of subject area, you know, fact-checking has become, I mean, since the launch of that a while ago, it's become such a big kind of, you know, people have been talking about fact-checking the debates, fact-checking ads, fact-checking so many different things. I mean, obviously there's been fact-checking before. What is it about fact-checking that has become such a big deal, and does it have an effect? I mean, it feels like even though there are so many fact checks going on, I mean, news organizations like CNN has their fact check, everyone has a fact check, but it doesn't seem like political ads or debates are being any more truthful because of it.
Well, first, the reason that we started factcheck.org was that beginning in 1988, that's the campaign with George Herbert Walker Bush against Michael Dukakis, I had been making the case that journalism increasingly wasn't engaging in checking of claims that were being made in politics, that we were seeing too much he said, she said journalism and not enough accountability journalism. And so after working with the AP in the 92, 96, and 2000 elections to increase its fact-checking capacity, in the 1992 election, let me backstop, we had developed a visual grammar for broadcast ad watching to try to increase the likelihood that the words of the announcer or the reporter would get through and the ad wouldn't dominate and persuade people more than it otherwise would. Basically, news was giving free airtime by ads by ineffectually fact-checking. But by 2004, we didn't see very much of it still being done. And so I founded factcheck.org in 2003 to try to help journalists to do more of it. CNN was the early adopter of fact-checking. It started doing it in 1992, and it started using the visual structure that we had used to help debunk advertising. You can find it on the FactCheck site. We sent a video on how to do that out to all the television stations this year, by the way. So the movement has been there for a while. The visual grammar has been there for a while, but this is the first year that it really took off across journalism.
Why do you think that is?
Didn't accomplish a great deal.
Why do you think that is? What is it about this year that really made the fact-checking movement, or whatever you want to call it? What do you think it was this year? Was it just the fact that it had been building up for so long?
The PolitiFact started in the last election, 2008, and
Right.
Washington Post as well, 2008. AP had been doing it since the early 90s. So there were 4 national sites all working on the same content this year. That made it easier for journalists to do it. And major journalistic organizations early in the year spotted an ad that took a statement by Barack Obama out of context. It was a statement that he had actually made in 2008 about a statement that McCain had made, saying that McCain had said if the elections about the economy were going to lose, took it out of context to make it appear that Obama was making the statement now in 2011, 2012. The journalistic function of fact-checking demonstrated that it was alive and kicking. Across the major news outlets, not just our fact-checking organizations, journalists examined that and said that was out of context. That was our first sign that 2012 was going to be a year in which there'd be a lot of fact-checking, not just by the so-called fact-checking organizations. And it had some effects. They weren't great, but they were real. Mitt Romney started out saying net he'd created 100,000 jobs at Bain. By the time the fact-checking function across journalism and his Republican opponents, using that journalism as leverage, had examined that campaign claim, Romney backed it off to say that he'd created those 100,000 at Bain across the life of the companies even after they were Bain companies, after someone else took charge, and as a result of investments by many companies, not just Bain, and then there were also losses. Well, that statement was accurate. So the fact-checking function of journalism, combined with the capacity of his opponents in debates to hold him accountable, made that statement that was inaccurate largely accurate. Don't think that happened by accident. You also saw the Obama campaign statement that Mitt Romney had outsourced while he had managerial control of Bain, moved back to say his firms had outsourced. May seem a minor distinction, but it's actually important in fact. If what you're trying to examine is, what did Romney do when he was actually in charge? So we saw some changes in candidate discourse as a result of fact-checking, but there were areas in which it just didn't work. The fact-checkers went after the Romney claim that Obama had gutted welfare, and they went after the Obama claim that Romney would ban all abortions, including rape in cases of rape and incest, and the campaigns just kept running those ads. However, neither candidate took the risk of putting those claims in the debates. And I attribute that to the fact that they were afraid that with an audience of 60 to 70 million people and the journalistic fact-checking process working aggressively, they might be called out on those, and as a result, the penalty might have exceeded the reward. So I don't think fact-checking has made a big difference this year. I think it's made a small difference in what the candidates have done. But here's what we do know. It's increased the likelihood that those who've gone to fact-checking sites are more accurate. We reported a survey, you can find it on the FactCheck and the APPC websites. It shows that when people tell us they went to fact-checking sites and we control for everything else that ought to affect knowledge, they're more knowledgeable about the claims of the candidates.
Yeah, that's good that that's made some difference. What about all the kind of, my last question to you is, there's been a lot of attacks on kind of the fact-checking organizations saying that there's, I mean, obviously there's always going to be someone upset that there's some kind of bias, but there was some real breakdowns and some real attacks that happened. It seemed like more than we had in the past. What did you think about all the kind of attacks on the partisan kind of attacks coming at you?
We expected it. When you see fact-checking happening across journalism, and you see the campaigns potentially being affected by it, you expect them to attack it as spin anytime they can in order to increase the likelihood that they can continue to repeat those deceptive claims. And in that contest between their construction of reality and the construction of the fact-checkers, you have an audience that now has the ability to go to the fact-checking sites and to go to good journalism that is doing fact-checking and to examine the evidence that is disclosed there and draw its own judgment about whether the fact-checkers have gotten it right. You know, the goal of fact-checking for factcheck.org, at least, was never to offer a conclusion and to ask viewers to uncritically accept it. It's the reason that we don't use a truth-o-meter or offer Pinocchios. We are trying to put in place the evidence that we have been able to find that lets you adjudicate the claim. And it invites you, as the person who's coming to the fact-checking site, to examine what is the available evidence, to link to it, and to draw your own conclusion. That's what we're really about. It's context setting, not offering you a conclusion and expecting that as some authority figure, we're just going to transmit it to you and you're going to accept it uncritically.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you joining us.
It's my pleasure. Have a good evening.
Okay, you too. Feel better.
Bye-bye.
Bye.